In Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on latent and operant learning. In our last lesson, we studied learned behavior. We defined learned behavior as the behavior that is acquired through experience, such as trial and error, or through insight. We also learned about habituation and sensitization. We learned that habituation is the process which results in a decreased response to a stimulus after repeated exposure to that stimulus over time. Sensitization is an increase in the response to a harmless stimulus, when that stimulus occurs after a harmful stimulus. In this lesson, we will be learning about operant conditioning and latent learning. I am ready to begin today's lesson, if you are, students. In classical conditioning, naturally occurring or unconditioned stimulus becomes associated with a different stimulus, but produces the same response as the innate stimulus. Operant conditioning can alter more complex and voluntary behaviors in animals and people learning to associate behaviors with specific consequences. Operant conditioning is a method of learning that occurs through rewards and punishments. Through operant conditioning, an association is made between a specific behavior and a positive or negative outcome for that behavior. The psychologist B.F. Skinner was the person to pioneer this method of understanding behavior. Skinner believed that behavior was understood by learning external, observable causes. We can find examples of operant conditioning at work all around us. Consider children completing homework to earn a reward from a parent or teacher, or employees finishing projects to receive praise or promotions. The more work they put into either school or work, the more their rewards increase. In these examples, the promise or possibility of rewards causes strength in behavior, but operant conditioning can also be used to decrease behavior. The removal of an undesirable outcome or the use of punishment can be used to decrease or prevent undesirable behaviors. For example, children may be told they will lose privileges if they talk out of turn in class. This potential for punishment may lead to a decrease in disruptive behaviors. Students, can you list some examples of things you do because of the consequences that will happen if you do or do not do those things?
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up! Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. I hope everyone was able to think of some examples. Some things you may have listed are that you help with chores around the house, because if you do not, your parents may be upset with you. You may have also said that you study because you want to get good grades, or perhaps you study because you do not want to get in trouble with your teacher. These are all examples of operant conditioning. There are many other correct examples you could have written down. If you are unsure that your answers are right, please check with teacher at the end of this lesson. Skinner identified 3 types of responses that he called operants that can follow behavior. They are neutral operants, reinforcers, and punishers. Neutral operants are responses from the environment that neither increase nor decrease the probability of a behavior being repeated. Reinforcers are responses from the environment that increase the probability of a behavior being repeated. Punishers are responses from the environment that decrease the likelihood of a behavior being repeated. In the example we discussed earlier about children getting rewards for completing their homework, that would be considered a reinforcer. In this video, we can see how operant conditioning works on animals. Every time a rat touches the lever, it gets a piece of food. The rat has associated the action with a reinforcement, so it will continue to push the lever. Latent learning occurs when the brain acquires knowledge at a certain time without reinforcement, but does not use that knowledge until it is needed at a later time. The word latent means hidden. In latent learning, the knowledge that is being acquired is not apparent as it is taking place. An example of latent learning would be if a child was to observe their parent setting the table for dinner every day for a year. After a year, the child's parent asks the child to set the table, and the child can successfully do the task. Although the child has never set the table himself before, he was able to learn to do it by watching and then carrying it out when he was required to do so. Latent learning describes how a species learns something in life, but the knowledge is not immediately expressed. It remains hidden until specific events or experiences might require the species to demonstrate this knowledge. Students, latent learning is an important part in how we behave. For our next activity, make a list with examples of things you have acquired through latent learning.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. I hope everyone was able to think of some examples. You may have said that you have learned good study techniques or how to promptly do household chores. There are many correct answers. If you are unsure whether your answer is correct, you may want to review your list with your classmates or teacher. This brings us to the end of our lesson, students. Today, we learned about operant conditioning and latent learning. We learned that operant conditioning is a method of learning that occurs through rewards and punishments. Latent learning happens when the brain acquires knowledge at a certain time without reinforcement, but does not use that knowledge until it is needed at a later time. I hope everyone enjoyed today's lesson. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.